Priority question.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. My question to the Minister is to ask the Minister, noting the low returns in recent years from relevant contracts tax, RCT, arising from an increase in subcontracting and self-employment in the construction sector, to make a statement on what measures the Revenue Commissioners and his department have taken or will take to ensure that RCTs aren't used in a manner that denies workers in the sector their basic rights, which are enjoyed by directly employed construction workers, such as REA rates of pay, sick pay, holiday pay, but resulting also, Minister, in a loss to the Exchequer of significant amounts of tax revenue, USC, PAYE, PRSI, if direct employment prevailed in the construction sector.
Thank you. Minister.
Thanks very much, Deputy. I have not seen any evidence relating to a negative impact on Exchequer returns and a change to self-employment in the construction sector. And I cannot, therefore, accept the Deputy's assertion in that regard. I'm assuming that the Deputy's reference to RCTs are not used in a manner to deny workers in the sector basic rights, as she quotes in her question. I take that as a reference to the relevant contract system, which is a tax deduction at source system that applies to payments made under a relevant contract in the construction, meat processing and forestry sections. As with any contract of engagement in the construction sector, whether a person is engaged under 1, a contract of service, that is an employee, or 2, a contract for service, that is a self-employed person, it's determined by the facts and evidence of each case, and not by the RCT system of tax deduction. Guidance on whether a person is engaged as an employee or a self-employed contractor is provided in the Code of Practice for Determining Employment Status of Individuals, which was prepared jointly by the Irish Congress of Trade Unions, business representative bodies and relevant state agencies. Both the electronic RCT e-system and the PAYE tax system deduction at source are underpinned by tax legislation and not by employment legislation. Neither such system determines whether a person in the construction sector, or indeed in any other sector, is engaged as an employee or engaged as a self-employed contractor. On that basis, it is incorrect to attempt to link the RCT system of tax deduction with any denial of workers' statutory employment entitlements, such as rates of pay, holidays pay, sick leave, etc. As I have outlined in my response to previous parliamentary questions in regard to the operation of the RCT system, the monitoring of the construction sector for abuses of the tax and duty system forms part of Revenue's ongoing compliance programmes. I know that Revenue commits significant resources to compliance interventions in the construction sector. There were over 15,000 tax compliance risk interventions in the sector in 2013 and nearly 17,000 such interventions in 2014. In addition, Revenue works closely with the Department of Social Protection and the National Employment Rights Agency, including conducting joint operations in the construction sector with both bodies.
Thank you, Minister. The rest of the reply will appear in the official report. Deputy Ruth Coppinger.
Well, Minister, the JJ Rhatigans dispute last year, which lasted over 6 months, brought to public attention the reality of life for construction workers at the moment under the so-called recovery, who are forced, thanks to a system of subcontracting and bogus self-employment, even if they don't want to be self-employed, they're forced to live on an income that doesn't meet the rates provided for in the registered employment agreements, but more importantly, doesn't even meet the minimum wage requirements, and these are skilled workers. But this isn't just a question of construction companies profiting from exploiting workers. It's a question of the state facilitating that as well. And in so doing, depriving the Exchequer of funds that you would think that we'd be killing ourselves to bring in. We've seen it in the Department of Education in particular, where many of the school contracts have been awarded to building and construction companies operating these systems. Thanks to the Construction Workers Alliance, a number of questions have been put in by deputies and have shown that workers earn so little they're not liable to pay the RCT, and they receive rebates, resulting in negative returns for the Exchequer.
Thank you, Deputy.
To the tune of $100 million from 2008 to 2014.
Minister.
As I've said already, guidance on whether a person is engaged as an employee or a self-employed contractor is provided in the Code of Practice for determining employment or self-employment status of individuals. And this document was prepared jointly by the Irish Congress of Trade Unions, business representative bodies and relevant state agencies. The guidance provided for the different conditions of work is not provided in tax law. It's provided in that document. But if the Deputy is aware of any particular abuses, the Revenue Commission would welcome any submission that she would make. You can contact them at hwtp/www.revenue.ie and business/shadow economy index HTM. And I can give you a copy of this if you have particular instances that you want to pursue.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Ruth Coppinger.
Minister, cynicism is at an all-time high about politics and this chamber, and to come out with a patronising answer, spending time giving me the Revenue Commissioner's website is just unbelievably patronising. If you compare what the state is losing to the tax receipts for directly employed workers in the sector of the same period I mentioned, 2008 to 14, it was £2.5 billion. But what's going on here is that your government is engaging in an encouragement of a race to the bottom, of a cheap labour economy to back up the so-called recovery, because you don't seem perturbed that revenue is losing this money. But what's most worrying for the workers involved who pay the price, I mean, there's one recruitment company here. You make it sound like workers have a choice. They show up, and if they don't agree to go along with these conditions, they're sacked. That's what happened in Rhatigans last year, which we spoke in this doll. But one recruitment company boasts advantages of using this system: no PRSI to pay, no holiday, no pension pay, no bank holidays to pay. And I love this one: ability to both hire and off-hire, that means sack, staff at 1 hour's notice throughout the country. And this is CLS recruitment just down the road, and they're encouraging the race to the bottom, and it would seem that so is this government in order to have a so-called economic recovery.
There's a series of unsubstantiated allegations that you make again, none of which are true as far as I'm concerned. I'm not patronising you in any way whatsoever. The Cathaoirleach cut me off before I'd completed the question, and it points out at the end. I know, I'm not objecting. I'm simply completing the answer, and by giving you the email reference. And you have made allegations of widespread abuse arising from the fact that persons who should be treated as employees are being treated as self-employed persons, and this to the disadvantage of the individuals. Normally, the charge is that people who should be treated as employees, they themselves want to be treated as self-employed for tax purposes. But you've reversed it. You say they're being exploited. Now, I'm saying if you have facts to support that, go to Revenue, and I'm giving you the reference to go to Revenue.
Deputy Coppinger, the next question.